it's an honor.
And it's an honor to lift our voice and sing
To the living God.
to the living God.
No one can deny.
No one can deny
That Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ is the Most High.
Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. A few weeks ago, we started this series, and traditionally we would do series specific to Christmas. But what I'm talking about in this series is the gift that Christmas is supposed to bring to us. The prophecy says that in that manger was a special person. That special person was the Messiah. And he was the Prince of Peace. And that means that the gift of peace that Jesus talks about all throughout John is ours. And what I'm trying to do in this series is I'm trying to show you areas in your life that rob you of this peace, because God has given you this peace. Jesus promised you this peace. He says, this peace that I have, I'm giving it to you. And the world cannot take it from you. Nothing can take it from you unless you allow it to. And what I've been doing is I've been paying very, very close attention to what's going on television. Because believe it or not, TV is the eye to our souls. I work in marketing. And one of the things that we do before we get ready to spend money on advertisement, we go and find our audience. And what we do, so if you're watching a television show, you ought to pay attention to the types of commercials, because those commercials speak directly to what the people who are selling the product believe, or who the people who are selling the product believe are watching it. So anytime you're watching something on television, the commercials are speaking directly into the character of the people who are watching the commercials. You don't believe that? Start to pay attention. And as I began to watch television, I noticed that there's a block of TV from noon until about 5 o'clock between the news cycles, in which I'm calling it Spike TV, Spiked TV. And if you got free channels, you're going to be bombarded with spite. It'll be one judge show after the next. And see what's happening in these judge shows is not like regular court. You got two people who are in spite with each other. They hate each other. They know each other in most cases. This is not the two people who never met each other. These are two people who at one particular time were probably friends. And then something happened. And now they've gotten into this spiteful relationship. And what they want to do is they want to do everything they possibly can to hurt the next person. It's not about court. It's not about the $500 that they're going to be awarded if Judge Judy is in favor of them. It's not about that. It's about making the other person pay. It's about humiliating the other person. There's an anger inside of this. And listen to me, guys. I got to tell you something. I got some bad news for you. We're in a spiteful country. You look at some of the tweets that go out at 2 o'clock in the morning. We're in a spiteful country. And if we're not careful, listen to me, this church is in danger of being a spiteful church. Probably just like the spiteful church that you left. Because we're just regular people who are being bombarded with spite all day long. And we are allowing, if we choose to allow for this spite to come into our marriages, to come into the way we raise our children. So when conflict happens in our marriage, we get into these spiteful postures. We begin to resent each other. We begin to get angry with each other. I was reading in the Old Testament, and David runs into this situation with his wife, and she doesn't support him. And you know what he does? From that point forward, at least that's what the Bible says, David begins not to love her as much anymore. And that happens in so many of our marriages. With raising our children, we're so into seeing our children suffer because we want them to understand the way we told them was right. We got to think about this, parents.
All right now.
Is it okay for us to want our children to have to be taught by the world what it is that we're teaching them? How many times have you been in a conversation with your children, with a sibling, with anybody, And you left that conversation thinking, okay, we're going to just see what happens. I'm going to let the world teach you. I'm going to let the world fix this problem. When you get out there, X, Y, and Z going to take care of him. I'm not going to even worry about it. And we begin to wish spiteful things on another person. And sometimes this person is our husband, is our wife. Sometimes this person is our sister, is our brother. Sometimes this person is a boss, is a co-worker. And here's the problem. Once spite gets involved, it's like a root. The Bible talks about it like a root. It keeps growing. Let me talk to you for a second. I got this issue in my front yard. It's in my flower beds. The only thing that's supposed to be in my flower beds are flowers. But I keep getting weeds in there. And no matter how many times I cut the weeds down, they just keep growing back. And if I really want to get down into getting these weeds out of my flower bed, you know what it's going to require me to do? It's going to require for me to do the busy work of getting down on my knees, getting out my shovel, and digging up the root. Because no matter how many times, listen to me, somebody who's keep getting into an argument in your house with somebody. No matter how many times you argue about it and cut the person down, root's still there. Root's still there. It's still gonna grow back up. No matter how many times you punish those kids, until you can help them get the bitter root out of their lives, they're gonna keep going through the same issues over and over and over and over and over again. Yes. Now check this out. I'm sitting there watching this television viewing just because I wanted to understand what the world was going through. I don't get caught up to these shows that much. Although, let me caution you, if you don't spend time watching this stuff, be careful. It's addictive. It's very addictive. But there's one show in particular that really takes the cake when it comes to spite. This show is called Maury Povich. Did I say that right? Now, let me just tell you, for those people who are not aware of this show, the primary base of this show, as far as I can see, is to get two people who at one particular time had a really good time because they got a baby coming. But now they're not having a good time. And now they're in a spiteful relationship. And all they want to do is to get each other on TV and embarrass each other. Because if they win, if the person wins or not, it's not going to change anything about child payments or anything about responsibility. The people are now already being responsible. This show is 100% on spite. And what happens, this guy Maury comes out after they've done all this arguments and all these spiteful behaviors and all this fussing, and then you say, well, we want to know whether or not, baby Lucas is this man's baby or not. And they bring out this envelope, and then it goes to a commercial. Now check this out. Here's the amazing thing. When it goes to commercial, walk with me now. You're going to see one spiteful commercial after the next. You're going to have somebody talking to you about an accident that you were in, and now we got to get back at them. So call me. I won't mention their name because I don't want them to sue me. That's going to be followed by another commercial that says, hey, did you have some mesh stuff? I have no idea what it is. Or did you take some drug and then this happened or that happened? Call me because we're going to go get them. And then another commercial comes on, and this guy's saying, well, have you worked in this area where they may have had asbestos? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Where they may have had some asbestos or something. Call me. Then we're going to go get them. And it's all one spiteful thing after the next. And then we leave there watching one spiteful thing after the next, and then we call our baby at work and we say, hey, how's your day going? And they say something, guess what we do? We react in spite. See, that's how those weeds got into my garden. Because at some particular point, I walked in, it was either on my shoes, it was either inside of some flower that I brought in. Something that I brought into my garden allowed for that weed to come in. And once that weed got in, it took root. And once it started to take root, it began to grow. And once it started to grow, if it's not contained, it'll choke out every flower that I planted. So how are we supposed to react when we're spiteful? I began to look at this Christmas story, and I began to think, who who teaches us about spite in this story? And as I began to look at this story, I began to eliminate some people, really can't get mad or consider spite what happened to Mary, because Mary accepts it. She accepts what's happening to her. Jesus, he comes down from heaven and he takes on this responsibility. Before he leaves, he already knows what's going to happen to him. But there's one character in this story who doesn't choose this. His name is Joseph. He's not even in Mark at all. He's not in John. He doesn't even get written about it in these areas. But Joseph, if there was anybody in the Bible that deserved to react in spite, it was Joseph. Joseph is doing everything that he's supposed to do. He's getting ready to get married. He's got himself in order. He's done everything he's supposed to do to be able to be considered by somebody's father to give them their daughter. So Joseph's checked all the boxes. He's got to be a man of some wealth. He's got to have a job. He's doing everything right. And he's getting ready to take in this wife. And then all of a sudden he gets the word, in the case of baby Jesus of Nazareth, Joseph is not the father. Now the question is, how do we react when something happens to us, when there's an offense, when somebody does something wrong to us, when we find out that we're not the father, when we find out that we're being fired, when we find out that we've been cheated on, when we find out that we've been hurt, when we find out that we've been mistreated? How are we supposed to react to that? Let's go back and look at how we make kindness greater than spite. I want to start by looking at this story in Matthew, and I want to just read through it. I'm using the voice. I like the way the voice, sometimes I just read the voice. I like the way the voice uses the modern words to explain. It says, so here, we finally get here. It's been since the beginning of the Bible. We finally get to the story of this Messiah. It's the story of the birth of Jesus, the anointed. This is the Messiah. This is the one that's going to save everybody, going to get everybody who believes in him into heaven. Look what he says. It's quite a remarkable story, isn't it? He says, Mary was engaged to marry Joseph, the son of David. They hadn't married, and yet sometime well before their wedding date, Mary learned that she was pregnant by the Holy Spirit. This had to have been a complete shock to Joseph. Joseph had to feel every anger, emotion, and every emotion associated with anger possible. Imagine this. You have waited your entire life to get married to this lady. You have done everything that you need to do, and you find out that from her that she's pregnant. And you have no idea. Listen to me. He has no idea at this point that she's pregnant with the Holy Spirit's baby. That won't be revealed to him until after he does what I'm about to show you in verse 19. He says, so Joseph, check this out. Because he was what? Kind and upstanding and honorable. Now they put this word together in most versions to mean just one word, and it means righteous. Righteous people are kind, upstanding, and honorable people. If you want to strive for anything, strive to be righteous, because righteous will make you kind, upstanding, and honorable. You see, Jesus struggled a lot with this in his earthly ministry because there were so many people who considered themselves righteous, but they weren't kind. And there's no definition of righteous that doesn't involve being kind and being compassionate to others. You need to try to do the best things that you know you're supposed to do. And one of those best things that you know you're supposed to do is to treat other folk right, regardless of how they treat you. He says because he was kind and upstanding and honorable, he wanted to spare Mary shame. He did not wish to cause her more embarrassment than necessary. So what Joseph teaches us, now listen, this is the one person I believe in the Bible that deserves to be more spiteful than anybody else, because at this point, he has no idea about this baby inside of his wife being from the Holy Spirit. All he knows is the person that he's getting ready to marry has got a baby growing inside of her. And his first reaction, he doesn't talk, because listen, he could have very easily been the judge and jury in this situation. All he had to do was tell one person. It wouldn't took a lot of people. If he tells one person the rule for this type of behavior, the rule for getting pregnant before you get married, the rule for adultery for a woman was to be stoned to death. All he has to do is just tell one person, and his spite takes over. He's able to do exactly, he's able to make sure that justice is served. There's no questions about it. But what he decides to do in this situation where he should have been spiteful, he decides to be kind. He decides to be upstanding. He decides to do the honorable thing. And the kind and the upstanding and the honorable thing is for us to just handle this stuff without everybody don't have to know about this. I don't want anything to happen to you that's going to cause you pain, that's going to cause you hurt. But now, isn't this so different than how we think about it? See, here's the reality of it. The reality of it is that we will all be offended. We're going to all be Joseph. Now, we may not be in a situation where our issue is as severe as Joseph's issue. Let me say that again. You may not be in a situation where you go through something as crazy as what Joseph is going through, but you will go through some things. And let me just stop. Let's just get the myth out, because what happens to you has very little to do with how you feel and how spiteful you get. It's more about who happened to you. Yeah. If we come home from church today and somebody's backed a U-Haul truck up to your house and taking everything out, you're going to be hurt. You'll be hurt. And you'll go through something. But 10 years from now, you probably won't be bitter. But if you allow somebody close to you, a sister, a husband, a child, a cousin, a friend, into your house, and they steal something that's worth $100, you may be bitter 10 years from now. You may be bitter 20 years from now. You may still be mad at somebody who took your shirt when you was in college, right? So it's never about the size of the offense. Joseph's offense is big. It's the proximity of the person that offended you that always matters. And this is very important, because we're all going to be offended. We're all going to be hurt by people who love us and people who we love. But we got to make sure that we never get into a place where we allow for that offense to take over. Let's look at this next one. It says that not only is it that we're going to get offended, but we got to get to a place where we don't allow that offense to turn to spite. We got to get to a place where we're able to handle that offense in a kind way, just like Joseph did. Isn't that hard? It's going to be one of those kind of sermons. Yeah. Prepare yourself for it. It's going to be one of those kind of messages today, because the life of Uplift, how wonderful Uplift will be. The life of your family, the life of your children, the life of your community is going to be determined by how you handle spite for the rest of your life. Look what he says right here in Hebrews 12. He says, pursue peace. We got to pursue peace with everyone and holiness. Without it, no one will see the Lord. Make sure that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no root of bitterness, and this word for bitterness is pikra, and it's the exact same word that's used for spitefulness, is used for harshness, is used for resentful, that resentful spirit. You know, when somebody does something to you and now you can't get over it, and now you're suffering with it, and now you want to punish them and you want to hurt them. And what Paul is teaching us here in Hebrews is just what he taught us in each one of these, is that there's two different kinds of ways that we are to respond to offense. Okay. So everybody's going to be offended. Right. So you might want to take some notes on this. Everybody's going to be offended, but how you respond to offense is going to determine your peace, whether or not you can sleep at night, whether or not you have to take pills in order to calm down, whether or not you can rest and your mind ain't always racing, thinking about folk and worried about folk, when they going to get you back and what you got to do to them. What Paul explains is that there are two different kinds of ways to deal with offense. We can deal with offense in God's way, or we can deal in offense in the world's way. And we deal in offense in God's way by just letting him have control. We don't have to worry about, we understand that God is in control, that nobody can do nothing to you without God. Listen, when Job gets tempted, the Bible teaches us that the devil has to go to the man first. Is it okay if I tempt him? You sure it's okay? God says, yeah, tempt him, but don't kill him. Somebody needs to hear that today. You might be going under some temptation, but that don't mean that God's going to let the devil completely destroy you.
Amen. Thank you, Lord.
He says that God's way is that God is in control. We don't worry about, trying to be in control. In the world's way, they're in control. Listen, they determine whether or not you're happy. You have to get away from them in order to be happy. So they make you go to another church. They make you lead a job. They make you lead a house. They make you lead a marriage because it's all about them. They're in control of you. In God's way, God does the punishment. We trust God for that he carries out the justice. We don't have to see it. You might not see it. Let me tell you something. I'm talking to somebody. There are some people who you are suffering with now in this area that are going through all kind of hell in their private life. You have no idea. You don't think God is dealing with them. But when they go home, they're going through all kind of hell. And if you would just get out the way and stop trying to punish them and stop trying to make them pay, God can really do his work. In the world's way, we got to punish it. We got to see it. We got to make sure that they heard. We got to get them told. We got to make sure they know who I am and what I can do. And you can't do nothing. In God's way, they require an apology from the person that hurt you. Nobody has to acknowledge that they made a mistake. Nobody has to acknowledge that they hurt you in God's way. Because if you keep waiting on that in your way, where the apology is required, you may go your whole life in hurt and spite without no peace in that situation. There's some folk walking around with peace that's been missing for 20, 30 years. Waiting on an apology that ain't coming. The other person don't even know they offended you. They don't even have an idea or a clue that they offended you, and you wait on an apology from somebody who doesn't know that they offended you. So guess what? No apology is coming. In God's way, it's all about kindness. You just let it go. You don't have to keep it. It may hurt you. You're going to be offended. That's what Jesus says. He says you're going to be offended in this world. But you need to understand, you don't have to hold on to that offense. You can get your shovel out and you can dig up every root of offense in your life. You don't have to be bothered by a person any longer, or a situation, or a job. You've got power over it. In the world's way, you get spite. That's all you get. You get spite. You get to go and call an 800 number and you get to talk to somebody about the mesh, whatever that is. You get to call an 800 number and you get to sue somebody else. Or you get to tell somebody off, and you never get the feeling that you thought that you were going to get when you tell somebody off. It never fills the void.
It sure doesn't.
And if you've got half of a heart, at some point, you begin to feel sorry for what you said and what you did. You begin to condemn yourself and have regret for the things that you said. That's why in God's way, you always experience peace. I don't care what they did to you. You want to get over what they did to you? Be kind to them. Be kind to them. You want to get over what's happening in your life? You want peace in every situation in your life? Be kind to everybody.
Yes.
Listen, Hannah talked about it last night. Don't treat the cashier bad. Don't treat folk bad. Don't be spiteful. Don't be nasty. Don't be angry. Be kind. Because in the world's way, that's just spite and no peace.
No peace.
So let's go a little bit deeper. How does this offense become spite? We need to understand this, because offense is like a root. And if we're going to get rid of it, we have to understand it. First of all, somebody offends you, you get hurt, and you want to do a couple things. You want to bury it. Think about like you take a root and you bury that root. You want to repress that hurt, and that's where that comes from. And then all of a sudden, that buried root, that repressed hurt, you never addressed it. You tried to ignore it. This person keeps doing the same thing to you over and over again. Instead of you saying, ma'am, sir, whenever you do this thing right here, it hurts me and it makes me want to slap you. Because that's what you feel. And instead of you addressing that and having that conversation and talking to that person and being honest and being truthful, you know what you say? I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to act like it don't happen. I'm going to be the bigger person. I'm going to just act like it never happened. There's no bigness in burying something. The bigness comes when you pull up a chair and you sit down with somebody and you say, hey, when you said X, Y, and Z, you hurt me. Don't say that again now. I'm being kind to you. God is with me and he's strengthening me. But now, after this now, I'm letting you know that the offense can no longer go forward. And whether or not we're going to be able to continue, because it's not about reconciliation. It's about not burying it. It's about not ignoring it. And it's about addressing it. Not only do we repress this hurt and it becomes this offense that turns into spite, but we rehearse it. We water it. We always talk about it. And we tell everybody about it. And let me tell you something. The folk around you are tired of hearing about this bitter root that you've buried inside of your wonderful garden, inside of your marriage, inside whatever, raising your children, at work. We are tired of hearing about it. I'm speaking on behalf of, everybody look forward. Everybody look forward. But not only do we bury it and water it, but we return it. We fertilize it. We want it to grow. We want to tell somebody off. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. And then you hurt me again, I'm going to hurt you. Even to the point that it hurts me. I'm so willing to hurt you that I'm okay with hurting myself. Let's go a little bit further. What are the signs of spite? See, you're not going to be able to fix this for everything. So what I want you to do is, I want you to focus in on one person. If we can get one person and get the peace from the spiteful relationship that you have with one person, I believe that you can make a difference in your whole life. So the signs of spite is, do you become angry over small stuff with this one person? I mean, no matter how small the offense is, you immediately get angry. You immediately get upset. Anybody else can do it. That's why I told you earlier, it's never about the size of the offense. It's about the person, always. Yeah. Do you complain about everything? Everything this person does. There's always some negative thing that you can find in everything this person does. Listen, nobody does everything wrong. Do you have oversensitivity to this person, to this thing, to whatever it is in your life that's robbing you in your peace? Does this person, every time they show up, do you immediately begin to feel the inside of your spirit, inside of your heart, inside of your stomach? Do you begin to feel it turning and churning and jumping? Do you get into a defensive place with this person? When this person says something, do you always receive it in a defensive way, no matter what they say, no matter what they're doing? Because this is what happens. I want you to understand this. For us, we want the whole world to judge us based on our motives. So if we're short with somebody, but we're doing it for Christ, we want to be judged on the fact that we're doing whatever we're doing for Christ. If we short with the kids, but you're taking care of them, we want to make sure that they judge us on the fact that, well, you know daddy love you, you know mama love you, you know husband love you, you know wife loves you. But for everybody else, we want to judge them based strictly off of their actions.
Wow. That's good.
We want everybody else to judge us based off our motives. I'm a good person, and I'm trying to do the right thing, and I'm trying to be a good husband, and I'm trying to be a good father, and I'm trying to be a good pastor, and I'm trying to be a good man. But we want to judge everybody else off of their actions. Let's go a little bit further. So what we got to talk about today, we got to talk about making kindness greater than spite. And you need to understand this, just like last week, you will not have a spite-free life. You're going to be offended by people all throughout your life. Many of them are going to be close to you. Some of them might be your pastor one day. You're going to get your place. You're going to get yourself in a place where you're going to be offended because we're sensitive, broken people. Yes. But the key to it is that you got to be able to to have more kindness inside of you than the spite inside of you. Look what he says right here in Ephesians 4:31-32. He says, get rid of all bitterness. We need to start by getting rid of all bitterness. If you can identify any bitterness in your life, anything, any bitterness whatsoever, any spite at all, any negative feelings that you have at all in your life, you need to get rid of it. You need to get rid of rage. You need to get rid of anger. You need to get rid of harsh words and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. And what God showed me when I was reading this verse, he showed me a doomsday clock. And if you think about the doomsday clock, it's basically saying when it gets to 12 o'clock, that's when they expect doomsday will happen. And if you think about this in terms of a clock, bitterness is the first hour. But if you don't fix it at bitterness, then it goes to 3 o'clock with rage.
That's good.
And if you don't fix it at 3 o'clock with rage, then it goes to 6 o'clock with anger. And if you don't get it at 6 o'clock with anger, then it goes to harsh words at 9 o'clock. And if you don't get the harsh words taken care of, it goes to slander at 11 o'clock. And listen, when this thing gets to 12 o'clock, doomsday, you're capable of doing anything. That's why it's so important that we don't allow this root of bitterness to even grow. We don't bury it. We don't fertilize it. We don't water it. We don't keep it. We don't rehearse it. We get it out. We get a shovel out and we dig it out. And we get it out of our marriages. We get it out of our house. We get it out of this church. If there's any bitterness, any spite, any hurt in this church, we address it. We sit down with the pastor. We sit down with the leader of a ministry and we work on it. He says, instead, check this out. Here we go again. Be kind. Instead of being bitter, instead of having rage, instead of having anger, instead of saying harsh and mean and the ugly things, you know the stuff that they say on Maury Povich. Instead of slandering somebody's name, instead of doing all types of evil behavior, including malice, instead of doing all that stuff, be kind. When somebody hurts you, when somebody makes you angry, when somebody jumps you in line, when somebody says something to you that upsets you or challenges you, instead of responding with bitterness, respond with kindness. And what does that look like? Be kind to each other. Be tenderhearted. Be tenderhearted. Forgive people. Just as, guess what? God has forgiven you. That's what this season is about. This season is a season of forgiveness. God forgave us, and he sent his only son into a manger in Bethlehem during this season so that child could grow up, be humiliated, be killed, raised from the dead, and sit at his right-hand side and intercede for us for the rest of our lives. Yes. But what it shows us is, check this out, that kindness is not forgetting what happened. There's nothing in what this Bible says about forgetting what happened. Now, I know that somebody told you a long time ago and you thought it was from the Bible that in order to forgive somebody, we got to forget. That is not biblical. And it's just flat out impossible. You do not have the ability to forget anything. Now, you may repress something. It's still in there, though. You may try not to remember it. It's still in there, though. Matter of fact, working at Emeritus House in Brookdale made me have a new appreciation for memory. I don't want my memory to go away. But what God gives you is the ability to get over whatever happened to you. It's not minimizing your hurt. We don't bury it. We don't act like it didn't happen. We don't act like the person's not offending us. We're not trying to be the bigger person is what we normally say. None of that works. It's not excusing their actions. It's not making an excuse for a person who's done something wrong and hurt you. That's not what being kind is about. It is not reconciling the issue. Listen, you may or may not reconcile the issue that's leading towards spite and hurt in your life. But that's not required for you to be kind. But what kindness is empathizing with people. It's saying that, you know what? Nobody would act that way unless they were hurting. It's really trying to sympathize and understand what's at the core. It's trying to help that person to get rid of their bitter roots. And when you can help that person, it's just understanding and being kind to that person, because you know that nobody who has well intentions would act that way. It's submitting to God's will for your life. This is what God wants for you. In that verse in Matthew that we went over where he talks about being offended, he talks about the fact that he will handle the person that offended you, not you. It's about submitting to God's will. It's about trusting God's plan. It's about believing that the person doesn't have any power over you. There's no reason for you to impose any justice, but that God has a plan for your life. It's about acting in kindness. And listen, there is no way around being kind. And I know we watch it on TV, and I know it looks like, we're just in a society now where it's fully accepted. I know you feel like you have been taught. Listen, we've been taught how to fight. We've been taught how to fight. Listen, before many of us get married, we have been trained in the art of emotional combat. Before any of us get on a job for the first job, we've been trained in the martial art of emotional combat. We are ready to chop somebody up in their spirit, ain't we?
Yeah, that's true.
But that's not God's way. Matter of fact, I'm challenging you to let go every root of bitterness in your life. Matter of fact, I'm asking you right now to get so much into your word around this particular topic that you allow for every single bitter root. Let me tell you what the bitter root is doing. It's choking out all of your happiness. It's choking out all of your joy. And it's choking out all the peace in your marriage. It's choking out all the peace in your parenting. It's choking out all the peace at work. It's choking out all the peace in every area of your life. And what I'm telling you today is you no longer have to live without peace. You no longer have to be spiteful. You can let go of that issue that happened between you and your sibling umpteen years ago. You can let go of the issue that happened between you and your spouse umpteen years ago, and it's still there. Although you're still together, it's still there. You can let go of the issues at work. You don't have to bring them to justice. You don't have to fix them. You can be at peace. Look what Paul says. He says, let your kindness be known to all people. Why? Because God is near. God sees everything. You ain't got to fix it. You don't have to put anybody in their place. You don't have to take care of anybody. You don't have to take care of your situation. You need to understand that God is near so you can be kind because God's got you. And what Paul says here in Philippians, that if we choose kindness over spite, then the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, it won't even make sense. It won't make sense to the person when they tried to hurt you and they're spiteful for you and you say, let me make your plate. When a person tries to hurt you and do something mean to you at work and you say, that's fine, let me help you with what you got going on. It's okay. When a person in your neighborhood, your neighbor, or whoever the case may be, a sibling or whoever it is, tries to spitefully hurt you and you respond by being kind, they won't understand it. And let me tell you something, mates. Your mate going to be sleeping with one eye open like this right here. Because the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, it will guard your heart. It will guard your mind. In Christ Jesus, you can have peace. So this week, I want to leave you with this. Instead of acting in spite, I will be kind, and God will make it right. Yes. And instead of trying to fix it, put people in their place, instead of trying to get my wife in order, instead of trying to get my kids in order, how about this? Try and do the kind thing and allow for God to do the other stuff. Instead of trying to take control of it on your own and do some spiteful and do some hurtful, I want you to try kindness this week and see if the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, comes into your life. Yes. To God be the glory. Amen. Amen.
Here we stand in the presence of our Savior.
It's an honor
And it's an honor to lift our voice and sing
to the living God.
to the living God.
No one can deny
No one can deny
that Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ is